The Last of Us was the PS3 swan song and a significant departure for developer Naughty Dog, which was known for either a combination of platforming games like Jak and Daxter or Crash Bandicoot, or more recently their success in the great trilogy of Uncharted games at the time, which were high-octane, action-y games. Last of Us was released June 14th, 2013, and this was a zombie game well after the zombie craze had died out. It was a new IP on a dying console. The Last of Us was a huge success. I played it a second time leading up to the release of The Last of Us 2 the last month, and, well, how does it hold up? And just because this is such an old game, we will be showing gameplay from pretty much all of the game, but we will not be discussing any spoilers. I don't think seeing any of the parts that I'm going to show would necessarily be considered a spoiler without any context, but just keep that in mind. Also, we are not going to be directly talking about the DLC Left Behind. That being said, it's extremely short. It comes with the PS4 version, which I assume is what 90% of you would be playing at this point, and it is worth playing. So if you like this review, please throw us a like. Let us know down below if you're excited about The Last of Us Part 2. And we have a bunch of other reviews on this channel, so feel free to consider subscribing. We'd really appreciate your support, and we will be covering The Last of Us Part 2. It's another reason to consider subscribing. Alright, so let's start with the story. I think that's probably the best place to start with this story-driven, narrative-driven, action exploration survival horror game. The story is simple but good. The cordyceps fungus is a real-world fungus that exists in our actual existence, which is kind of scary considering how well 2020 is going. And it essentially infects insects, and it targets their central nervous system, which alters their behavior, kind of putting them in positions where they wouldn't normally be, encouraging them to be eaten, encouraging them to go out into the open when they wouldn't, that kind of thing. This virus mutates and spreads to humans, effectively making them a unique spin on zombies. They're not zombies, but they get this infection, and over time, they become increasingly dependent on the fungus. The fungus increasingly takes hold of them and in fact grows out of them in kind of grotesque and gnarly ways. And you play as Joel, who gets by in this dystopian world by doing some side jobs. He's a smuggler, he's a gunman, he's whatever you need him to be, and a side job comes your way. Escort a 14-year-old, possibly immune Ellie to the Fireflies, a group looking to find a cure to the infection, and the two of you set off across America to deliver her to said Fireflies. And while the plot, idea, and setting have all been played out, it is the characters and character development that really shines. I mean, this setting has kind of proven its worth as being the kind of penultimate setting for ethical dilemmas and last resort, characters doing whatever they have to do, and setting up really unique scenarios, and this is kind of no different. I mean, coming of age, fall of innocence, grief, ambiguity of good versus evil are just a few of the really well executed themes in the game. I particularly really like when gameplay complements storytelling or the theme that they're trying to deliver because, well, it's a video game. This is the one place where you have control of the character, and that can influence the plot, which doesn't happen a lot in video games, and it does in this. And an example would be ambiguity of good versus evil. It's this idea of, you know, it's Joel and Ellie, right? They're trying to find a cure. They're trying to help people. So when people attack us, it's okay to kill them, right? Well, the combat is absolutely brutal. I remember the first time I played it, it was some of the hardest stuff to watch in a video game at the time for me. And that brutality has carried over, and it still is a very brutal game. You don't just kill people in The Last of Us. You really take them out, and you're hitting them with baseball bats with scissors through them and lead pipes that are reinforced, and it's not fun to watch, and that just makes you question if what you're doing is all worth it at the end of the day. Let's talk about the presentation, speaking of all this visceral combat. This more or less holds up to its contemporaries on the PS4, which I assume is what most people would play this on. It's what I played it on for my second run. There is a huge resolution and frame rate bump, allowing you to pretty much lock it at 1080p 60 or 4K 30. Apart from some rough textures, I would say even the animations are kind of up to par to normal PS4 games, a lot of the current gen stuff. Maybe not the first party stuff, like this does not look as good as God of War, but you know, take your average PS4 game, this is holding its ground. And the soundtrack is subdued, kicks in at just the right times. Voice acting is great across the board, with especially great performances from Joel and Ellie in particular. Ellie is your sidekick all along the way, and she only acts as an asset. She never holds you back. You never have to worry about her, watch her. I mean, yes, she can technically be captured by infected or whatever, but it's never overdone, and more often she is a valuable asset rather than a hindrance. She can interact fairly seamlessly with the environment. You'll see her sitting on things, leaning on walls, and occasionally dialogue options show up which allow you to talk about the world before, see someone's perspective who was born into this world versus someone's perspective who has seen both sides, and it's much better than the random audio recordings that were so popular in games of that time, like in BioShock Infinite. So, great story, great presentation, but how does it play? Well, this is essentially a survival horror game. Think RE2 remake from at least a combat perspective. You almost never have more than 10 shots per weapon. There's real-time crafting, like you can't pause the game and make your health. You are making health and explosives and whatever you need on the fly. There's really great enemy variety. Humans with variations of the infected. There's variations of the infected who can't see, for example, so they use echolocation, and you have to sneak around them. There's infected who will sprint at you, and there are, of course, humans with guns as well as other ways to kill you. And the game really shines when there are multiple types all at once. In the DLC in particular, there are a lot of there's a lot of instances where the infected are interspliced with humans, and you can, you know, throw a bottle at the humans and that will alert the infected to run and kill them, and then you can kind of clean up the scraps of what's left. The game is very tense, very fun, and very cool, with the exception of these simple, laughable puzzles that are really like three flavors of like swim and find a raft or a pallet for Ellie to go on because she can't swim. I can't wait for the joke where Ellie can finally swim in The Last of Us 2. Find a ladder or push a cart. Those are really, really simple, laughable puzzles. I don't know if it would have been better to just remove them altogether or focus on making some better puzzles. And the AI, the human AI for stealth is rough. Like you can, it's extremely forgiving for getting stealth kills. You can pretty much be in their line of sight and they won't see you. But once they see you, it is actually decent AI. So in conclusion, the game still holds up. Apart from some questionable environment design where you know a shootout's going to happen, some rough stealth AI, and some laughable puzzles, The Last of Us can hang with its contemporaries. Strong story, gameplay, and execution. I 100% recommend playing The Last of Us. You can play it now, leading up to Part 2, or anytime in the future. It is a great game worth playing. That's all from me, guys. I will catch you next time.